Hello and good day to you. Today's video on the versatility of a digital image in various crafts, the video edition. We are demonstrating the technique of pixelating. We should be using machine knitting, hand knitting, crocheting, cross stitch, beading, pixel or 8-bit games, and many more crafts. For this project, we'll need a graphic software. I'm using Corel PaintShopPro version X9 of the software. You can use any graphic software you have that has a pixelating plugin or effect or mosaic effect. We need a color palette. If you are using lineart, we need a color palette. It all depends on what you want to design. You need the size of the product that you're designing it, that's pixelating for, or this pixel. We'll also need, if you want to, you can use a graphics tablet and a stylus, but I'll be using the mouse because I'm just going to flood fill and use the magic wand tool, or in some other program they also select tool or the selection tool. You need a digital image for this project. Drawn, you can hand draw it and scan it into the knitting. You can hand draw it and scan it. The digital image can be in fill, that's filled with colors, or it can even be photographic, or it can be in lineart. Then you have to fill it. So go to File, open this graphic software, click on File, Open. Locate the folder where your image is in. So I'll just select an image from here, and you can see some of my images are in fill here, and some are in lineart. So I'll select a lineart image. It's the same process, except you don't have to fill. Click on Open. However, in others, I'll use one of a colored one so that we can use a pre-colored one or something, so that we can know how to use pre-colored images. So go to this is the original of the image. This is the image original. So we don't want to work on this one. To preserve our original and not to make mistake of saving over it, on the keyboard I'm using Windows. We want to duplicate this image. So press the Shift key on your keyboard and press the letter D. And if you take a look at your work surface, a document known as image 1 will appear with the same image. The original is named. So click on the original and close it. We're going to work with image 1. There are different techniques of coloring an image. I'll go with one of the fastest techniques for this project. We'll do other techniques when we are working in different sections of the projects, in different topics in this book. So for this, if you want to remove the background, is Merge. In recent version of the software, you just select the move tool, activate the background layer, and you just drag the image and the background, and the image will move from the background. In older version of this software, you need to right click on the image. First, let me go back and prepare it again. Right click on the image layer, then go to Promote Background Layer, and it will rasterize the background so that you can move the backgrounds. And when the background moves, it's going to change to raster 1. So I'm going to go through a faster way of, because we just want the line art and want line art of this background. Especially if you have a kind of dense background, or you have a kind of, for your line art, it's not that clean. The background is not too clean. If you click on it, take the magic wand tool, just click the icon here, you select the magic wand tool. If you click into the image, a section of the image, you will see that it's not properly selected, and this can affect your image. So in the tool option, if you play around with the tolerance and the feather, you can use lower value of one and higher value of the other. Let's make the feather tolerance 3 and the feather 4. And anti-aliasing, not check. I just go to selection, none, so that we see the, and you click into a section of the image. If you take a look at the image, after setting the tool option, you take a look, you see that it's selecting more than necessary. You have to play with the tolerance and feather for you to get the actual selection you want. Alternatively, if you click into the lines, it's going to select just a section until you, and if you put the mode to add, you can keep on clicking to add more selection to it. But that's a long process for some. So we'll I'll just go back to selection none, so that we'll come back to our original work. Select the move tool back, and we'll start our work. So on the layer palette of this image, what you do is to change the effects of the layer. You change it to multiply. You notice that the image darkens. Right click again and duplicate. The effect should still be on multiply. You notice that the line, the coloring is now getting very dark. I'll duplicate this about 10 times more. I'll duplicate this about let me make it very dark, say 20 times. So we are now on copy 20. It's quite dark. Right click on the layer again and click on merge visible. Select the magic wand tool, and in the tool option, mode is add, match mode color, tolerance, let's leave it on 3, and feather, let's put it on 0. We don't need a tolerance now, we just want to try it. Feather 0, contiguous check, anti-aliasing, not check. So zoom into the image, click. You can see that it's not selecting everything. That means let's try another section. The leaves. Okay, the leaves, when I selected the leaves, you take a look at it, you will see that there's selection around the lines of the leaves, but the petals is not being selected properly. So we need to make sure the petal is selected. So for that, we will need to go back to selection none, go back to the layer palette, change the effect on the layer palette or the mode to multiply. Select the move tool, and then we'll reduplicate 20 more times. You can, it's not compulsory to duplicate 20 times. You can just duplicate and try to see when the image is ready for the selection. Remember, the mode should be on multiply. I want the image to be darkened. In later part of this book, we also visit different ways of selecting images, as we do coloring in and other types. So I've duplicated it 20, and you can see that the image is now dark. Right click on it, click on merge, and we say merge visible. Select the magic wand tool again. Click into the, now you can see that the image is, the inner image is very dark, the lines. Click into the lines, and you notice that it's been selected, even without feathering tolerance. Not only the lines are selected, I'll just, even the leaves are selected too. This is the effect we want, because we want to lift the lines from the background. You can right click on the layer palette and click promote selection to layer. That is one option. And when you close the merge layer, you will see the image. Another option is to create a new layer and then color in. So we'll use this option. Then you go to selection and select none. Now we have a neat line art. What we need to create next is a color palette. If you already have color palette, you have the hex code of the colors you're going to use, that's fine. But if you don't have the hex code, let's build ours. And you can input your hex code when you want it. Select the rectangle tool in the tool palette. You can use circle, you can use circles or ellipse shape. You can use rectangle, you can use any preset shape that you have. So I'm going to select the rectangle. You can use any shape you want to. So I'll select a rectangle. In the tool option, create it on a vector, or you can create it on a raster. And also the mode should be draw square. If you want to, you can tell it to draw a rectangle. That's optional. You just want to create we just want to create a color palette. In a material palette, color palette for the material, The background, the stroke is going to be close the stroke and fill the background with a color of choice. You can draw your square, just a little square, because we need our eyedropper tool to just select when we want to color. So I'll zoom in so that you see it. Just a little square on the side. In the layer palette, you will notice that it's been created on a vector because in the tool we said it should create it on a vector. And it's filled with color. So right click on it and tell it to convert it to raster. Alternatively, if you decide to use a circle, before you convert it to raster, while the nodes are selected, you just drag the nodes at the end while the nodes are selected, just drag the nodes at the end and you can change it to a circle or to any shape you want to make. So right click on the layer palette and convert it to raster. Duplicate, right click on the shape again in the layer palette and duplicate that layer. With the move tool, or you can use the pick tool if you want to. The pick tool is with the move tool. You can move the duplicate out. Duplicate and duplicate again. We have to merge these four color palette layers together. You can just close the lineart and then merge visible, or you can, if you don't want to close the lineart so that I don't merge it with the lineart layer, that's why, you can right click and say merge down, but make sure the layer that it's merging down is it merges with at the bottom is the color palette layer. Until you've merged all four layers together. Right click again and duplicate if you have more colors to use. And then you merge down. So we have our color palette layer now. We need to fill with colors. Select the magic wand tool, select the first color, and in the material palette, click into it and select a color of choice. So because we'll be using this for a blanket, I'll use the colors of the blanket. I'm using it for a mesh knitted blanket. After selecting the color, make sure you select the palette. Make sure it's selected. Take the flood fill tool and flood fill the palette with the color of choice. You go back to select none. In the material palette, select a color of choice again. This time I'll go for a darker green. Magic wand tool, select one of the shapes. Flood fill tool, fill with the color, the pre-selected color. Then go to selection and select none. Material palette, you pick another color of choice. You continue repeating these steps until you've have flood fill or colors. If you have a hex code, you can input the hex code here. So I have a white color, and because the background, when we're working, the background is going to be white, and it's going to be, I don't want it to be as if it's a blank color. And it also applies to when you are designing any other color. If the background and the color palette are going to be the same, so that I don't look blank, and you have a color palette that has the same color with the background, so that when you're working, you don't just fade into the background and look blank. This is what I do. I click into the color palette. I'll just fill it with black first. Then go to selection and select none. Select the rectangle tool or the tool you need to draw the color, to draw the box for the color palette. Fill it with the color you need it to be. Close the stroke if you don't want a stroke. Then just drag it. And I'll go back into the layer palette and then convert it to raster. Right click on it again and merge down so that it merges with the main color palette layer. Now I have a color palette that is white. So if the background is white, you will notice, you will see this color palette, you know that there's a color here, because the white won't just fade into it and become invisible and just be like a blank color palette. Alternative, that's if you don't want to put hex code. Alternatively, you can just put hex code, but I do it like this and put hex code so that you know that there is a white in there. I'm going to use this red too, this dark red, and so we don't need this other one. If you want to, you can take the eraser tool and just clean the last one. So I just clean this one or erase it off or erase it. So let's start coloring in. Select the magic wand tool. Still the same tool option. Mode is add, color is 0. Match mode is color, tolerance 0, contiguous check, feather 0, anti-aliasing not check. Click into the center of each image. So we'll start from the petal. Just click into the petal. Activate the lineart layer because you're working on the lineart layer. So activate the lineart layer. Let's go closer. Click into the petals. If you want to work with one petal before the other, that's fine. Since you are going to flood fill, we'll just click into each and every one of them. Click into the leaves to select them. So let's go closer so that you see it. Make sure there's no selection around the edge of the image. Now there is a selection around the edge of the image. This is going to make our background filled with color and it's going to cause error for us. So I'll go to edit, undo, because I think that this is the last one that caused it. I'll leave that. I'll come back to it when we are working. When we finish selecting and working. You can do the technique now or you can do it later. So it's optional. So I'll come back to that. Made a mistake, so I'm going to go back to edit, undo. The selection should be inside the petal or inside the leaf and not around the border of the leaf or the background. So if you take a look, you see that the selection is inside the image. Let's select the stamens. Now every of our design is selected. Create a new layer. You can come down here and just click on new layer, and in the layer palette you can click down on this icon here that says, and click on it. It says new layer. You can create a new raster layer. We are working in raster. If you want to create a vector layer, you can, but I'm working in raster. Let's name this layer the fill layer. If you don't want to create through there, you can come in the menu palette here. You can click on it, layer, and you have a new layer there. You can create another layer there, or you can create a layer there. You can use the flood filter for this technique, or for this coloring, or you can use the brush tool, paint brush tool. But we're going to use the flood fill tool. Activate the fill layer, the new layer you created, and we are going to start with the material palette. We are going to start filling our designs in. So work with the inside. I'm going to work on just one layer, but you can work on different layers and then merge them together or save your work so that you can come back and change the colors as you desire. But I'm going to work on one layer. With the black color selected or flood fill, I'm going to flood fill the stamens with black. So just click into them. Remember, we are working on a new layer, the fill layer. So activate that layer. Missed one selection here, so take the magic wand tool, go back to the lineart layer, click into the selection that you missed, and with the flood fill tool, come back to this fill layer and you fill it in. This second petal, we're going to use pitch for it. So with the eyedropper tool, click into the pitch color. This pitch is darker than the one I want, so I'm going to, I don't know if I make it light. Okay. I'm going to make it light and use that one. The one in the palette is darker. Let me just use the one in the palette. So with the eyedropper tool, click into the color in the palette, and even if it's darker, you can do what I did. You can lighten it here, except you have the hex code, then you can put it there. If it's darker, click into the color material palette, and you can just use a slider to take a lighter shade or to move back to the shade that you want it to be. Select the flood fill tool. Make sure it's a fill layer that is activated, or if you want to create a new layer for it, which I prefer for you, that's fine, but I just want to work on one layer now. You click into and fill that area with the color. For the bottom petal, select the eyedropper tool. Select the purple, lavender purple. Select the flood fill tool and flood fill. It's time for the leaves. Eyedropper tool, select a green of choice, and then we'll flood fill. With the eyedropper tool, select the dark green, and then we flood fill. So if you notice, we can't flood fill this because this has not been selected due to it selecting the background. So what I'm going to do is go to selection, none. Take the eyedropper tool and select a black color so that we can make the lines, close the lines. Then with the brush tool, paintbrush tool selected, select a small size. That's too big. So go down. That's too small. So we'll just keep on moving. Okay, that's all right. Activate the lineart layer and just color. Activate the lineart layer and just color in. Activate the lineart layer and just color in. Now we've closed it. With the magic wand tool, select the part that wasn't selected. Now if you take a look at it, you see that the background is no more selected. Activate the fill layer. With the eyedropper tool, select the color you want it to fill. Then with the flood fill tool, you can fill that color in. Then we'll go to selection and select none. For this we need to do the lines, and for the lines I'm going to use white, and the background we're going to use the dark red. For that, I want to create a new layer. So go to layer on the menu and create new raster layer, and we can call this the line fill. Oh, I said line. Line fill layer. You can leave it above, you can leave it beneath, that's fine. Select the magic wand tool, zoom into the image and activate the lineart layer. Click into the original lineart layer, click in to select the lines. Once you selected the lines, activate the line fill layer. We are going to use white for it. So with the eyedropper tool, click into the color palette so that in the material palette there's white in it. Select the flood fill tool, and in the line fill area, and in the line fill layer, just flood fill and to be filled with white. Then go to selection and none. Activate the lineart layer, the original lineart layer. With the magic wand to click on just the background. If you take a look, you'll see that the selection is around the background and around the image, but there's no selection in the image. In the layer palette, click on in the layer menu, click on it and create a new raster layer. We'll call this the fill background, so that it's not you can use any name you desire and click on OK. This fill background layer is going to be below the colored layer. With the eyedropper tool, select the red color, the dark red color. Click into it and let it so that the color is filled in the material palette. Activate the fill background layer, and with the red color, just flood fill when you want to. So you notice that the red in the color palette has disappeared. If you remember what I said in the beginning, this is what I was trying to avoid, that I did for the white, just to explain it to you. But since I've finished with my color palette, I'm just going to close it. Close the visibility of that. So if we open the visibility of the color palette, you see that the dark red color has merged into the background. Like I said earlier, if you have a color palette, you want your colors to show. That's why I explained that using the white color. Click on selection and selection none. Close the visibility of the color palette. We have to save our work. We'll save this in PDF format so that we have it in layer format, and then we'll continue working on it and we'll save it again in a mesh file or when we pixelate as a JPEG. So click on File, click on Save As, and Save As type is going to be PSD Photoshop, so that we can open it in other software. If you want to, you can click it, you can save it as a PSP image. That's the original save type of Corel PaintShop. So I'm just going to type and say pixelating. Pixelating technique. And I'll click on save. So let's pixelate. We are going to save this in a new image name. Although we've not closed it, we're going to save it in a new image name because we're going to work over it. So can right click on the image layer and click on merge visible. Right click on the image layer and click on merge and merge visible. So we're going to work with this merged layer, and if you want to, we can delete this. Just right click on the palette layer to delete, or you can use the icon at the bottom to delete that layer, and you can delete the line art layer. So we have our image to use for the work. So click on, let's save it again. Let's save it as in another format so that we can use our work. So this time I'll say File, Save As. I won't call this, I'll call this for blankets. I'll just add for blankets to it and click save. So now we are not scared of saving over our work because we've resaved the file in another name. So go to Effects, Distortion Effect, click on Image, Resize. We need to resize our image to the size of the product we want to use it on. So I want to use it on a blanket. The first thing you need to do before you start resizing is the resolution. Some software tend to have bugs or tend to freeze when you have a large resolution and you have a large size. So what I'll do now, since it's going to pixelate, I'm going to reduce it to 72. The resolution will be on 72 and pixel per inch selected. Lock the aspect ratio so that it don't skew your work, don't make your work not proportional. If the original size of the image is 4.9 inches by 9, that's small for my blanket. The size of the blanket that I'm making, I'll just get my calculator in here. Is 78 plus drop is 17. It drops on, and for one side of the drop, and this is other side of the drop, so it's 112 for the height. So for the weight is 56 plus 17 for the drop and 17, so that's about 90. If I put in the size for the width here, if I put 90, although this is supposed to be more than that, if it happens, just click on the inches and change it to centimeters, and then come back and change it to inches. Then you have the original inches. Why? It's because sometimes it's pre-programmed. It can only go to a certain size, but you can influence that by just flicking between the unit of measurement, and then it will reset. So you see, instead of 133, it was showing previously as the maximum size that it can resize to. It has altered to change back to the original. It can resize to any other size it wants to. So now the height has increased to 171, which is more than the height we require. But I don't mind, because my work is not going to be skewed, because I locked aspect ratio, and also the width is going to be what I want it to be. The width is what really matters for me in this blanket. So I'm not I don't mind if the height increases a little. If I don't do that, if you check lock aspect ratio, and I'm just going to play around with a small figure and just say 69, and you can input different figures here, and I'll say 112, and I'll check resize all layers. You will notice that the flower is a bit the petals in the flowers is kind of bigger, and it's plumber than and it's not proportional. Go back to edit and onto resize compared to the original. That's because I used the smaller size. But if we say we should use another size, you will notice the same. So I'm going to let me use the original sizes that I have. This is 90, so I'll put this 90, and lock aspect ratio is not check. Then we'll come to the height, and I'm going to put the height so that you understand properly. So 78 plus 17 plus something, I think that was 112. Okay, that's 112, and you click OK. Taking a look at it, you will see that's not proportional. You can see what I was talking about. So I don't want my blanket to be like that. You go to edit, undo resize. So to make sure it's proportional, which is image resize, we have to lock the aspect ratio. Resolution is going to be 72. Then I'll input the size of the width, and it will automatically calculate it for me. So it has started this error, so I'll go back to centimeters, then I'll come back to inches, and it give me the right size. Remember, resolution 72, and check resize all layers, lock aspect ratio, and input the size. Advanced setting and resampling using bicubic. Sharpness is on 50. Also, if all these are not showing, that's because advanced setting has not been checked. When you check it, you see the other information to use. And we are resizing by print size. So click on OK, and it will resize the work. What we are going to do is you decide the size of the pixel you want it to be. For the blanket, I've just playing with my. So to decide on my blanket, I'll just click on the design. I need to put it on to one side. Can I put it on this side? Okay. Yes, all right. I'll go to piece, block new piece. I'll enter a new tension, and then click OK. It's in inches, it's working in inches, so I have to go back and just name the piece. I'll call it a pixelate square and click OK. You go to the option unit of measurement and change it to centimeters. Okay, then option, I'm going to change the tension here. Let me make it white so that you see. So option, so I'll go to the option tension. I'm going to change the tension in here. The tension for 40 stitches in centimeters is in it's 18, and the height of 60 rows in centimeters is 17. That's because I'm using tension 3 LK 150 of the silver reed SK 150, and the yarn I'm using is Aran yarn, and it's 100% acrylic. No, is it 100% acrylic? It's Aran yarn. I'll just put the, I don't know the configuration, so I just put the brand. That's So Crafty by Aldi. It's Aldi yarn, So Crafty, and Robin brand by Thomas Ramsey. Okay, I have to take this one, put it here, by Thomas B. Ramsey. So I'll click on OK. We've set our attention and what we're going to use it for. That's why we open the Design and Ink software. I'm using the original pattern drafting section. The size, I'm going to fit it to length. So the fit to length, this time I'm going to work in inches. Unit of measurement is going to be inches. And I'll fit it to, I want 3 inches to see how it's going to be on the knitting machine, and the width is going to be fit to 3 inches. So each pixel size is going to be 3 inches. And I'm going to save it and say file save as pixelate blanket or pixelate square. I have one here, but I'm going to remove the trial so that I don't have to type pixelate square, and I'll click on save. So if we click on the interactive section, pixelate square, click on OK. I'll click it on here. You will see that we'll need left needle 8 to right needle 8. That's a 9 size on the, because it's a mid-gauge knitting machine, so that's a 9 size. And if we go to see the last row we need to knit for each square is going to be 26. The row counter will show 26. So 8 needles to 8 needles, that's about 16 needles. Cast on 16 needles, and we'll need 26 rows. So that's nice for design. So I can work with a 3-inch square. So back into our work, I'm going to make this 3-inch square. So that's how we design it. And because we are designing it for a blanket, if you just want to pixelate, you just go to Effect and Pixelate. So before we start pixelating, because if you click on Effect and Pixelate, you will need to know the value. We need it to match. So I'll go to File, New. We're just going to create, I'm going to make this 3 inches, a new document. So we're going to working in inches, and I'll just leave the resolution at 72. I'm working in inches. If you take it into pixel, you see it's 216. So back into inches, 3 inches is 216 pixels. So that's what we want. So I'm going to put it in pixels. I'll leave it in inches, sorry. Leave it in inches, resolution, I'll just click OK. We just need this just to know the size, the pixel size. So go to Effects, and if you forget, just go to Image, Resize, and you see the original size here. So when you take it to, when you click by pixel here, you will see it in pixel. So 216. We need that information. So going back into our pixelated blanket, you go to Effect, Distortion, and Pixelate. Then we already have 216 here. If you make it symmetry, it's going to make it a square. But if you don't want it to be square, you want to be rectangle, you can input any, you just uncheck the symmetry and input any other figure you want here. So if you want the block to be, if you're creating patchwork blocks and you want it to be rectangle and square, then you can do this. Just uncheck the symmetry. But for this, I'm going to make it symmetric. Check the symmetric and put OK. So here we have our pixelated blanket. You can make it bigger if you want to. And if you take a look, let's just go closer before we go to the next step. You will notice that there are some light fades here. That's where the white mixes with a color. It fades it and makes it a bit pale in color. We need to demarcate this color. We first of all need to demarcate it. You want to know how many squares you need to make and how many squares for the width and how many squares for the rows. So to do that, we need our grid to help us for that process. So go to View and go to Grid. If you notice, the grid is smaller than the squares. It's not fitting into the squares properly. So I'll just zoom in so that you see that's not fitting into the square properly. We want it to fit. That is as if to demarcate each square properly. And to do that, you go to View and you go to Grid, Guide, and Snap Properties. Then you click. You remember the figure we used for the values we used for the pixelate. You need to input that value here. So I'll put 216. And the unit is in pixels, 216. The color, I'm going to change it to a lighter shade. And I'll click on OK. Then when you finish, click on OK. If you say that now it's been demarcated properly. So to make sure this, now that it's demarcated properly, if you want to start, you can change each color to demarcate to make sure it fits properly, or you can go to, if you're using something like an image, a photographic image, you can go to Image and you can go to Decrease Color Depth and start using, you can use color depth. To decrease it, you click on it and then you can use you can change it to, you can click to decrease the color depth, but we are not going to go to that because we are not using images. We'll do that when we are using, I'll do a pre one on that so that if you're going to use photographic image, you know how to use a photographic image for this kind of work. If you print this, it's not going to print with a grid. So we need to do that first. Let's save our work. go to File, go to Save As, so our blanket is pixelated. We need to save our work. So go to File, go to Save As, and we can save this as a JPEG, and we'll click on Save because it's just on one file or one layer. So it's all right if you save it as a JPEG, and we'll say yes. We'll tell it to merge. But for us to have the grid on it, you just print the screen on your keyboard. If you want it larger, you can zoom let's make it larger so that for those that want it larger. I've printed one before, so I'll just go to File, Edit, Paste as New Layer. So this is the one I printed. I'm going to remove the grid first so that you see. This is the first one I printed. So I'm going to put back the grid. And we'll see this. So if you want it larger, you print. You just take a layer, print on that. You just make it, you zoom in, then you print. Press print screen on the keyboard. And then you go to Edit and Paste as New Layer. Come back into it. You have to note where you printed from. So I think I've noted that. I'm just going to go. You can line it up. This is going to print about 3 times now. Just to make sure it's the right size. Okay. We'll press another print. Come back into this new one and say Edit, Paste as New Layer. The first one is Paste as New Image. Then because we are going to join them together, we are going to Paste as New Layer. So we're going to print this. And then we'll come back into the and say Edit, Paste as New Layer. So we have 3 layers of the image. I'm just going to go to View and remove the grid so that we see our. So if we close each one, you see that there are different sections of the image. So to make sure that we have to line it up properly, so we need to resize our the canvas size. So go to Image, Canvas Size, 888 is going to be 24. This is the original. Oh, the height is 15. Sorry, this is the original dimension. 26.6 is the width. So the width, we'll leave it at that. We'll make it. We'll leave it at the original. Then the height is 15. That's going to be about 45. So we'll make it 45. So here's the original figure. So we don't need to resize the width. We need to resize only the height. If you want to, if you are working with width, you want to resize the width, that's fine. Then we click on OK. So here we have a large. We need to start lining up. This is going to be the bottom. And this is the middle, and this one is going to be the top. So if you do not release, just remember to use Just if the background didn't release, just right click on it and click on promote background layer. I've already released mine, that's why it's grayed out. So now we have the 3 sections of our artwork, our pixelated blanket. That's if you want it large, this is it. So you get to selection tool, click on the selection tool, click on this square selection tool, the one that says selection, activate the layer you want, and then just drag across. Okay, so an ellipse. So click on the selection tool. I'm just going to bring the wind. So in the tool option, if you can't see your tool option, just go to view, palette, and you click on it, the one you want to see. The selection type should be rectangle. Mode is add shift. Feather is 0. Anti-aliasing not check, and selection type is normal. So I'm just going to zoom in. Going to be deleting different sections. So select, just drag the cursor across, or the selection across the first image, activate the image you want to work on, and then you just click delete. So we've deleted the, I'll go to selection none. Like the base here, we can delete them. We don't need all these ones. So I'm going to press on delete, and we're going to delete those ones. Any other thing you want to delete, we can delete those ones. Going to click on, we'll do same, activate the layer you want to work on, and we're going to do same for them. So we finished deleting all the unwanted parts. I'm going to select none. We'll still delete all this material side. We can just delete those ones now. So I'll just click on one side and press delete. And move into each layer to delete them. Then do same for this other side, so that I'll work with only the image. Then you go to select and selection and select none. So here we have the image. Can use the pick tool or the move tool, and we're just going to line it. So zoom in so that we'll can use the arrow key on your keyboard to move. So if you want to know how to line it, you make sure you know this is where this lines properly to this. So I'm just going to put it in there. And it has lined properly, but we have a black line. So if you have that black line, you get a selection to magic wand. You can zoom in, active, Get the selection tool, use the other selection. I think that one is better off. Then we'll just go closely and select. Make sure it's the right layer we are working on. So okay, this is it. Then we'll click on delete, select none, and that black line has been deleted. If it's not, you go back again, and you have to be careful, very careful this time. Okay, I'll just throw it into this one. Now click delete. Select none. So I'll move down to make sure, because I deleted one. I just want to move down to make sure it's the right one. That's down. It's the right one. So we've merged the upper layer with this, remaining the bottom layer. So I'm going to reveal the remaining this bottom layer here. So we're going to put that, and we're going to make sure it lines properly. So let's look for where we will need to line it up on. Before the gray starts, so we have to go towards this gray now. Okay. Okay, so it has lined properly. Take the selection tool, activate that layer, the upper layer, and we are going to delete the excess on it. Then we'll go to select none. Then come back to the bottom and delete any unwanted one. Select none. So here we have our grid. Can also just drag across, or if you want to, instead of using the selection tool, you can use the crop tool, because we need to resize the image. So select the crop tool, drag it to fit the surface, the image, just going to zoom in to make sure it fits the image properly. Don't want to miss any pixel. And then you click the check, the tick tool, and we have a perfect image, enlarged. And so that's how to make it large. And when you print screen, you want to make it larger than normal. So with this image here, our original image, there's something else I omitted. So I'm going to select the magic wand tool for that and put my grid back on. If you want to fill each side with like white or something, you want to demarcate it properly with the color, like the line with the color, just click into the selection, into the shape or the pixel, and you can see that it's selected. So click into the pixel, it's going to select it properly. Take the flood fill tool, or you can take the flood fill tool. If the color is at the background, you right click on the mouse. So I'm just going to right click on the mouse to float fill, and you select and you start float filling. So that's how, if you want to demarcate the colors, because when we pixelated, the colors mixed with each other and it gave us a lighter shade. So when you want to demarcate the colors from each other, you can come in with the selection to float fill with the color that you want the demarcation to be on. So I'll go to selection now. I'm all right with it like this. I can work with it like this. But if you, I know that when I click, this is it. So all those faded ones, they are the ones mixed with white. They are the white line art. The solid color, the pale colors are the white line art, while the solid ones are the main colors. Not all the pale ones, like this darker one, you can still leave it as the purple. It all depends on you when you try and recolor to see if it's the actual color. Let me use the brush to paint brush. The paint brush is faster for this, because once you select, it's going to just float fill for you. So you have that demarcation. So you have that demarcation. So you continue in that process if you want to demarcate each color from the other. Okay, we missed one here, so I'm just going to do that one. We don't want to leave it. Oh, I've used the wrong color, so I'm gonna change it. So here it is. We've demarcated them. That's how to demarcate. We finished coloring the image. If you take a look at the pixel and you notice that there's one color you want to change from a color to another. Let me just look for one quickly. Perhaps let me use this green. Let me use this one of this green. So I'm going to use this one here. Okay, I've colored this one green and I want to make it white. One of those green. I'll just okay, this green here is better. So if I've colored a green here and I want to make it white, what I need to do is to take the eyedropper tool and select the color I want to fill the material palette, the color palette with what I want it to be. That's color in the material palette. I'll fill it with the color I want to use. Take the magic wand, and if you click, you'll notice that all green color, the selection is now on all the green color in that section. what you can do is to get a paintbrush tool, select the square shape, and in the size, our pixel was about 216. Is it 216 or 261? So I'll just go 216 and try. I think it's 216. So you put the pixel shape, you put the pixel size as the size of the brush. Then you come in here, you have to zoom in to make sure you line it properly. And then you can make sure it lines properly with the grid. And you click in. You've already filled it with white lining ink. And if you take a look at it, the color, you notice that it's only that pixel that is being filled. Then you go to selection and selection none and select none. If you don't want to select, you can still do that. Here is another. I'll take this, select the eyedropper tool and fill the color palette with a color. I'll use this here. This one just one, so you don't need to. But if I decide to add others to color with it, this is what you pick the brush and you just, and I'm going to, you take the brush, pixel size is the size of the brush is a pixel size, and because others are selected, you just click into, make sure you line the brush with a pixel, and then you click into it and it's colored. So that's how to color a single pixel if you want to change. Alternatively, you can use the selection tool. You decide on the size. On the selection type, you take a square. So first of all, go to selection none. Take the selection tool. Selection type should be square. Mode, add, feather, 0. Selection type normal. Width. Here you can decide you can zoom in. Just place your the selection tool on the cursor and then you drag to form, and it will form the square shape there. Then you can color. The disadvantage of this is that when you do that, you see that the edges here is omitting some edges, so you still have some edge missing. I'll put the chat on the blog for anyone that wants to need the blanket so that you can download it, and I'll put a link on the video. We need to save our, click on File, Save As, and I'll save it as in JPEG. We've already saved it as a JPEG, so you can still just click on File and Save to save it, or you can here to tell you if you save it before, it's going to ask to that it already exists. So you may need to, if you want to rename this, if you want to so I'm just going to call it 2 and I'll save. Remember that for this, if you will remove, remember that for this, if we remove the grid, this is how you're going to see it, and you don't want that. You want the grid to be in view, so that you know how many size, so that you know the numbers of size to knit, or the numbers of squares that you're going to cut out, depending on what you are using it for. If you're using for beading, you want to know the numbers, when to change beads. If you are using it for quilting, you want to know how many squares you're going to cut, and if you're using for knitting, you want to know when you're going to, how many squares you have to knit before you change to the other color. So we're just going to count the squares. Sorry about that. Just going to close the material palette and the layer palette, because it seems they're disturbing coming in the, and we're going to count 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 21 22 23 20 29 30. So 30 squares. We're going to cut 30. We're going to need 30 squares of for the width. It's going to be 30 squares. 5. Is it 5 or 4? The inch. I'm sorry, I'm just going. So we're going to need, so across we need 30 squares measuring 3 inches each. Then for the rows, for each rows, if you notice the bottom row, the bottom row is just a little here. But if you want to make it a full square, that's optional. You can make it a full square. It's your design. If you want to delete that row off the design, that is optional too. You can do whatever you want. Because it's not a full square, you can decide whatever you want to. As far as the design or the image is not in it, you can decide to omit it, you can decide to make it a full design. So I'm just going to count how many rows we need. 1 2 3 4 5. I have to go closer. So I'm just going to count how many rows we need. I have to zoom in to do that and make sure I mark where the next one is going to begin from. So we have, for the width, horizontal is 30, and for the vertical is 57. If you want to add other small to it, that's fine. So we need to print our work. I'll just close a few. This is the one we did the print screen on earlier. Since we've done that, I'm going to just delete this. We don't need this one. This is another one that I did earlier. This is another one that I did earlier. This one, the size of the blanket is for a king size bed. Can see it's very large. The size of the blanket is about 200, in width is 230, and in height is 438.65 inches. The pixel is different. You can see that it's detailed. That's because the blanket is larger in size and the squares we use are very small. So for the pixel, I think I used I think I can still remember that one, the pixel. So I'll go back to view grid and we'll edit the pixel for it. Okay, the pixel is 288. That's the pixel that I used for it. 288. And 288 is in inches is 4 inches. Why it's so detailed is not because because the size is big, and the size of the blanket is bigger than the one we designed just now, and the pixels quite small for the blanket. So you can use any size you want. You can make it as detailed as you want. If we take a look at this, we'll be making more squares on the, let me put the grid back on. We'll be making more squares on the horizontal and more on the vertical than what we designed for our we'll be making more squares to make up the 208. We'll be making more squares to make up the 230 inch in width. So the smaller the pixel, the more detailed the design. So this is the other one. I'll just check on it to make sure it's the right one. The one we did the screen print on in layers, where we join them together. So I'm going to save that one and save as. You can put it in PSD, you can save it, but to print we'll have to have it in JPEG. So I'll just call this layer 3. So this is the one we need. I'm going to put on the grid. Then we'll print screen. Press the print screen on your keyboard. Go to edit, paste as new image, and it will appear as a new image. So here it is. Remove the grid by going to view and grid. Get the crop tool just drag it until you've removed, so that we remove excess, what we don't need. You can leave a little gray on the border so that you know that you didn't cut out some designs. Click on the apply tool, the check tool or tick tool, and it will crop the excess. So now when we print, we'll save this one, and when we print, it's going to have the grid on it. So I'm going to recrop some excess of it. Then we'll click on, still have gray borders here, and I don't want that. So whatever you don't want, you just crop it. So click on File, Save As. We'll save it as JPEG, and we'll call this chart Pixelate Blanket Chart. I'll just put to differentiate the one I have before. So because of the book, so I'll have to put a little of the book title here, and then I'll click on Save. So now we have the image saved. Anytime we open it, because we have print screen and have the with the grid on it, anytime we open it, the grid is going to appear with it. So just save that, and here we just click File, Save. I'll leave the grid. As said earlier, the chart is going to be on the blog and a link on the video. Thanks for joining me for this video of pixelating technique in the versatility of a digital craft image in various crafts. Until next time, happy crafting, happy designing, and bye for now.